Hello, and welcome to Archives and Records Simplified. These videos are aimed at people looking for basic knowledge about archives and records management, although at times I will also touch slightly on information and library science. These videos are designed to provide bite-sized chunks, which means that almost every video will be less than 15 minutes. These videos are honestly for everyone, and comments and suggestions are always more than welcome. About me, Sean McMillan, I'm an archivist based in London, and you can learn more about me via my LinkedIn profile, to which there is a link posted below. And I'll also post a transcript and notes also if you struggle at any point to understand my accent. And lastly, if you enjoy these videos, I would be extremely grateful if you could kindly like, subscribe and share. Thanks again. Okay, so this video is about the Black Cultural Archives in London. Okay, so an overview. The Black Cultural Archives grew from a community response to the New Cross Massacre in 1981, the Police Criminal Evidence Act in 1984, and the underachievement of black children in British schools, the failings of the Race Relations Act, and the negative impacts of racism against and a lack of popular recognition of the representation by black people of African and Caribbean descent in the United Kingdom. So the Black Cultural Archives is very much a reaction to a number of issues that needed to be addressed. Their founders, including Lynn Garrison, came to the conclusion that there needed to be a space where members of communities, especially young people, could come and find very positive representations of themselves in history and culture, and the Black Cultural Archives is an answer to that problem. This act of self-help expanded into the creation of what the founders called an archive museum that evidenced and painted a more detailed and comprehensive picture of the Black presence in Britain. They used their mission to collect, preserve, and celebrate the histories of people of African and Caribbean descent in the UK, and also to inspire and give strength to individuals, communities, and societies. At their London headquarters, they run a series of exhibitions, educational programs, and public engagement events, and they provide free access to a unique set of archives, museums, objects, and a reference library. They've become the leading non-governmental and heritage institutional voice for the Windrush generation, and they are very much a part of the Windrush Action Group and the Windrush National Organising Committee. The Black Cultural Archives Network also includes collaborations with the Universities of Roehampton and King's College, and they are leaders in the heritage sector for work on the workforce diversity and also interrogating decolonial archival practices. So, as I said, the one thing that I think you'll find from this video is that they're a very dynamic institution and that they do a lot. And I think one thing I should probably make clear from the outset is that this video probably won't do justice to the sheer amount of work they do. I thoroughly recommend checking their website for more information. But hopefully, if there is one theme that really becomes apparent from watching this, is that I think this is a fantastic example of how archives can be dynamic. Archives are not always necessarily passive. How we use them, how we engage with them, even what we decide to keep and what we decide to get rid of, can be a very much active and can be it can be an act of power. And I think that the Black Cultural Archives are a fantastic example of how archives can be used in a more powerful way. So anyway, that's just a more general point that I hope becomes clear throughout the video. Okay, so in terms of their collections, obviously this is a YouTube channel for archivists, so their collections are one of the things that interest me most. Their collections are quite extensive. They comprises of over 50 square metrics of archival materials across 2 sites. And their collections include over 3,500 records across 41 collections, and this includes a wide array of collection types such as personal papers, organisational records, photographs and objects. Moreover, their archives are very, very much rooted in the communities that created them, and they endeavour to ensure that their collections are representative, and at times it's worth pointing out that their collections are in part catalogued, by trained volunteers, and I think people with a sort of specialist knowledge of topics that were maybe involved in some of the movements involved. I think they do play a role in helping with the descriptions. Um, they are currently requesting material relating to Black Lives Matter the activities that took place this year, and I think this is a great example of a collaborative, proactive, and current approach to collections management. So, as mentioned, I think sometimes there can be a perception that an archive is just a sort of very passive place where old records go and just to be taken care of. But one of the things I like about the BCA is that they're very proactive as well. They're looking out collections that they think might be relevant to them in their communities. And I just think that's a wonderful example of an archive being dynamic, taking the initiative and being proactive. And to be honest with you, I think this kind of approach, I think, is likely to be more common in the recent years if the archival sector is to keep up with modern trends and practices. So as I say, that was quite refreshing to read about. So one collection that really caught my eye from looking at their website were the papers of Stella Dadsey. So Stella Dadsey is best known for her work on the Heart of Race, Black Women's Lives in Britain. That was a book published in 1985, which won the 1985 Martin Luther King Award for Literature. And I think she co-authored it with Beverly Bryan and Susan Scaff. Dadsey has written widely on curriculum development and good practice with Black adult learners and other minorities. And she's very, very well known for her contribution to tackling youth racism and working with racist perpetrators. And she's a key contributor to the development of anti-racist strategies within schools, colleges, and youth services. So she has quite a prolific career, and I think it's obviously quite important that her papers are preserved. One thing that I did find quite interesting about her, and I hope this doesn't sound morbid, is that she's actually still alive. So often, in my experience work as an archivist, especially when I was working at Oxford, I would work in the papers of people that had died a very, very long time ago. It's actually quite interesting to see the archive of someone that's still very much alive and I think active. So that's rare, and I think that's testament to the BCA. So yeah, that was quite interesting. The collection itself contains materials relating to the organisation of women in African and of women of Asian and African descent. So that's OWAD, and I think it includes chapter drafts for The Heart of Race, which of course was her very popular book. It has ephemera and periodicals relating to campaigning, both within the Black women's movement and other student organisations. And the archive runs largely, I think, from 1970 to 1985. So it's relatively recent, which again is quite refreshing. Looking at the Dadsey catalogue, I also noticed that they have a series for campaign-related materials, which are organised by various causes, such as international politics and police. And I noted that they had materials relating to environmentalism, which I found interesting, especially as I think maybe I had probably the wrong perception that this was something that was more of a 21st century concern. It was interesting to see that there were papers relating to environmentalism as early as the 1980s within this collection, so that's quite interesting. And also there were campaign papers relating to labour, women's, gay and lesbian issues, and quite a vast variety of topics, to be honest, which I think indicates how intersectional the collection is. So although it's very much the Black Cultural Archives, it is worth pointing out that their collections, as is the case with collections of many institutions, can intersect with other topics, and I think that's always worth indicating and worth remembering. So overall, I thought this was a really interesting collection, and from the outset, I have to say it looks like a very well catalogued collection and very professionally done. Okay, the Black Cultural Archives are also very industrious when it comes to outreach and learning. The first thing to note is their Twitter page, which is a fantastic way to keep up with their work. They update it quite regularly, and they also have a new digital space for online exhibitions, which you can access via their website. So, for example, I think this includes something relating to the Windrush Waves project, which I found quite interesting. For Windrush Day 2020, the Black Cultural Archives asked young people to share their creativity and to celebrate Black histories. The entries for this project were all from people aged 14 to 21, which I have to be honest, I don't think I've seen anything like this before. An archive sort of reaching out to people within that age group. It was there seemed to be like a very obvious attempt to engage and work with a younger audience, which I thought was quite interesting. You can also explore the BCA archives on the Bloomberg Connects app, which can be downloaded via Google Play. More information about this is available on our website. I haven't looked into this in more depth, but it really intrigues me quite a lot. I've honestly never heard of an archive that has its own app or its own portal within an app, so that's definitely something worth looking at. And they also normally run a series of events. Now, for obvious reasons, and of course this video is being made in December 2020, these are likely to be suspended, but I recommend keeping an eye on their events page and on the list. Sometimes there are digital events. I signed up to one earlier in the year called The Civic Archivist by Erika Oke via Eventbrite, which discussed the role of the archivist. And also, Erika touched on her own work as an archivist. It's worth pointing out that I think Erika is the director of the Black Cultural Archives, and I think if I remember rightly, she's also registered, which is the archives equivalent of chartership. So it's definitely worth looking at what comes up. They do have a very talented staff, and even I think even just from a general archival perspective, you can learn a lot from the work they do. They also run a schools program and offer a range of teaching resources, interactive school workshops, and training courses to support schools across the country. And lastly, they have a news blog which is updated regularly. Okay, and lastly, some contact details and further information. So for a start, as I said, the website is very much the best place to start. This video is being made at the end of 2020, and if you're watching this in 2021, and I hope to God we've all made it, then I would check there for any new and updated information. The Black Cultural Archives are based in London, Brixton. Their email address and phone number are also on the website. And they also have a shop, which I recommend checking out, albeit I think it's closed at the time of recording. But definitely, I think I had a look at their shop before. I think at one point, I think I saw a board game, I'm sure there, and some shirts and stuff like that. And I think it is quite an interesting shop, so it's certainly worth looking at. And lastly, if you like their work and are able, you can also make a donation. It's my experience that such organisations often rely heavily on community funding and donations to keep their collections free and accessible. It is worth pointing out that a lot of what they do, if not quite frankly the vast majority, is free. So just something to keep in mind. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, and feel more than free to leave any comments or questions below. Thanks again. And if you enjoy these videos, I would be extremely grateful if you could like, subscribe and share. And also just to remind you that I would be absolutely delighted to take any requests for future videos also.